Today we're going to talk about the best investments of 2020. Now, I'm going to go through what I believe are the 4 best investments for the next year and probably the next decade, to be honest with you. I'm going to break this down. All of these investments are investments that I have a lot of experience with, and I'm going to go through them one by one. Before I get started in that, I kind of want to explain a little bit of where my perspective comes from. So I believe that we, as a country, as a nation, as a world, are debt-ridden, and we're just going into more debt every single year, year by year. And I kind of drew this kind of little diagram just to kind of give you an example. Right now, everything going on with Ukraine and all that stuff, they're talking about financial aid going to Ukraine. But when no one's ever, and whether Trump withheld it, whether impeachment, blah, blah, blah. But what no one's really talking about is where that money's coming from. I guess actually I did that wrong. There's not an arrow coming this way. We give Ukraine aid. So we give Ukraine money basically as a country. Again, but no one ever talks about where that actually comes from. So, for example, we don't have money to give Ukraine. Our country is in debt, like 22 plus trillion dollars in debt. You think about that. That's 22 and 12 zeros. That's 22,000 billion. Like, wrap your brain around that for a moment. I mean, that's nuts. But anyway, so essentially what's happening is the U.S. issues, we sell our debt in the form of treasury bills. So in other words, we take out a loan. We sell treasury bills to China. China holds our treasury bills. They give us money for those treasury bills, and we pay them back with interest. The problem is, where do we get the money to pay them back? We pay them back from our tax revenues as a country. But we don't have enough tax revenues to pay them back. In fact, right now, we barely have enough tax revenues just to pay the interest. And here's the crazy thing. So what do we do when we want to pay our debts? We sell China more treasury bills just to pay back the previous treasury bills. And it's not just China, they just happen to be one of our largest financial partners. So with that being said, one of our largest holders of debt, American debt. With that being said, here's what's crazy. Right now, Trump is in trade talks. We're in a quasi-trade war with China. But the reality is, China holds kind of the Trump card. And again, understanding this is the basis for how I make my investment decisions. So this creates a lot of economic stability for the U.S. because what happens if China decides not to buy our debts? Or what if they're like, hey, after a while, like, this is kind of scary. And China's already shown that they're considering this. China's encouraging their citizens to hold gold, to buy gold, to save gold. So you got to ask yourself, what is that all about? I'm going to show you a little bit of a hint about what's going on with China. What do we do with the money that we borrow for China? Well, an enormous percentage of that money is used to build up our military, to build up financial programs to pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc., and to give financial aid to Ukraine. We literally borrow money from China that we don't have, and we give it to other countries as aid. You think about how crazy that is logically. And then, if China's their credit card, we can't pay the credit card bill, so we use another credit card to pay that credit card. All that does is make the problem compound exponentially. I've got a couple things I want to show you real quick. And understanding this, if you start looking at this for a while, I mean, it can get kind of scary. But understanding this is how I determine what my 4 best investments are for 2020, because I think we've been in some very good economic times right now as far as the stock market is concerned and as far as employment is concerned. But you cannot have good years forever. I believe that we're going to head towards an economic slowdown. So when I'm looking at financial investments, it's based on that economic slowdown. And just to make the case a little bit bigger for you, right here are some charts just to take a look at. So a lot of times people are like, oh, we need a Republican in office. Republicans are better with finances. They cut taxes. Well, it doesn't matter if you cut taxes if you increase spending. Or Republicans, Democrats, they spend too much. Well, if you look at this chart here, it doesn't matter who's in office. They all increase spending. In fact, to historic levels. Like, when Bush got out of office, he had pushed the debt. He had spent more money in debt than practically anyone else. When Clinton went into office, believe it or not, Clinton is one of the few people who actually, and some people, if you're Republican, you try to say, yeah, but Bush left them in a position for a good economy. And if you like Clinton, you try to say, yeah, but Clinton did a really good job as president. So everybody's passing the buck. All that matters is that the debt didn't go up as much under Clinton, ironically, but it went up under Bush like crazy. And then Obama skyrocketed it. And Trump already is growing the U.S. debt faster than any president before him. And part of that, like, you're almost required to, because you have to borrow more money to pay off the debt. But let's just keep going. This is just showing you how quickly the debt rises in the past, since the 40s, all the way to the 10s, and we're coming into the 20s, right? How quickly the debt goes up. That's nuts if you think about it. That's just absolutely nuts. And it's going to keep going up faster and faster and faster until something happens. And whatever that something is, I promise you, it's not going to be good for you or me, the little guy or the little gal. Okay. One more. This is the debt ceiling. You hear all the talks about the debt ceiling. Oh, Obama needs to do something. He needs to raise the debt ceiling so federal workers can get paid, or Trump needs to raise the debt ceiling so federal workers can get paid, or whatever. This is the debt ceiling. And then what happens after they raise the debt ceiling, there's a big spike in spending. So the debt ceiling was supposed to be there as a hard cap in Congress. Like, this is the debt ceiling. The government can't spend beyond this. And the idea was to force the government to basically rein in spending. But they never do. And they don't rein it in primarily because the citizens, we the people, don't want them to. Because if they rein it in, then it means somebody's not going to get their Medicare. Someone's not going to get their welfare, their food stamps, or their Social Security, God forbid. I mean, people work their whole lives for Social Security, and sooner or later, it's just not going to be there. Or we pay Ukraine, or, we give money to whoever. I mean, whatever government spends money on, right? They spend far more money on frivolous things than what they ever get back from tax revenue. And I call it frivolous because anytime you can't pay for it, it's frivolous. But this just shows you how often they keep increasing the debt ceiling. All right, here's another one. This is interesting, debt to gold ratio. Interesting right here. People started getting confident in the stock market, therefore gold prices kind of came down. Gold market kind of got overheated right here, and gold prices kind of come down. Normally when people are uncertain about the economy, gold prices go up. That's a hint to that, by the way. Just a bit of a tip. So what are my four? Understanding that we are probably headed towards economic uncertain times, potentially within the next year. I believe making investments that have the potential to go up in good economies and go up in bad economies, or be resilient in bad economies. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at investing. And I will tell you, I love investments that can produce a cash flow. So that's going to kick us off with investment number one. There's 4 in total. So investment number 1, what are we talking about? We're talking about dividend stocks, but not just any dividends. It's dividend aristocrats. If you don't know what a dividend aristocrat is, these are dividends that have a 25-year track record. These are stocks that have a 25-year track record of not only providing a dividend, but increasing their dividend year over year. Right here, 57 companies that have increased their dividend yields, not just remained the same, for the last 25 years. So this is extraordinary. So the great thing about dividends are this. Dividends don't lie. Cash doesn't lie. For a company to be able to pay a dividend, they can't fudge the books. There's a little bit of, I'm not saying they couldn't do it at all, but they're paying a dividend. So for example, any of you who remember Enron? Enron could have never really paid a dividend. WorldCom could have never really paid a dividend. Anytime a company stops, if they have a track record of raising dividends and they stop raising their dividend, then that's typically a good sign that they're not as financially strong as they were before. By the way, it doesn't mean they're going to crash and burn. It just means they're not as financially strong. So when you can find a company that has a track record of raising their dividend, that's good. And so dividend aristocrat investing is a way to be able to invest in solid companies that tend to be resilient even in down economic times. A lot of reasons why I would invest in dividend aristocrats. First of all, is this. It's easy to invest even if you don't have a lot of money. This is something that you can get started with a few $100s in today's day and age. You can use something like the Robinhood app or whatever you want, and you can start buying dividend stocks. The other great thing is dividends don't lie. If cash flow is coming in, the company has to be doing decent. If they're continuing to raise their dividend every year, that's awesome. And I'm going to tell you specifically kind of how at least one strategy I use to pick dividend stocks as well, because I don't expect you to go buy all 57 companies. But then what you want to do is one more thing is dividend companies, oftentimes there's a little bit of predictability. You can almost predict when they're at a good buy. And the way you know that is based off their current historic price for the dividend. So let me show you what I'm talking about. AbbVie, for example, Abbott Labs, there's automatic data processing. So this is their current dividend. This dividend percent changes based off the price of the stock. So let's go here. This is, what is this? This is automated data processing. So when they're paying a dividend, let's just go look at 5 years. So this is their 5-year chart. Their price was way down here. 49 cents are paying 53 cents, 53 cents, 53 cents, 57 cents, 57, 57, 57, 63, 63. So now here's the thing. Notice how much the price moves right here. But notice 69, 79, 79, 79, 79. Here's another example. See, the price moves 63, 63, 69, 69, 67. 79. So you can kind of look at what is the average yield of the stock. So let's say ADP, and it takes a little bit of research. Let's say the average yield of ADP is 2%. Well, if the price drops, you may see that all of a sudden it's selling at the yield is 2.2% or 2.5%. Unless there's some sort of unexpected news that something bad is going on with ADP, then it's probably going to be a pretty good time to pick that stock up. When the yield is historically high on a stock that has a solid, consistent 25-year track record of raising their dividend price. I hope you call that. The dividend yield is historically high, meaning based off history, it's high, even though the dividend has been the same and raising over time. So when the price drops, and this happens because these stocks are very boring. They're boring. They just spit off a beautiful cash flow. Now, I've done very well with dividend stocks over the years, like very well. And basically the strength is being able to reinvest that dividend into the stock, pick them up when the price is low compared to the historic yield. So let's just say Archer Daniels. I don't know about Archer Daniels. I haven't looked at it, but let's just say that normally it pays out about a 2.5% yield, but you happen to notice today it's paying out 3.5%. Well, and this is back from October, but let's just say, well, let's see what it is now. In October it's 3.5%. Let's see what it is now. Where's the yield? Usually it's over here somewhere, I think. Oh, so it's 302 right now. So it's not as good of a buy as it was back here in October when this chart was done. It was a better buy in October. That was just an example. What I would recommend that you do is, let's just say you had $1,000 to invest. Spread it out over, 10 different stocks. Maybe you buy one or two a month and you just look for good buys. Now, just because it's a high yield, I tend to favor things that have a higher yield, but a high yield isn't everything because it may have a high yield and it may increase its dividend, but it might increase it very slowly. So the other thing is there's a lot of energy companies are dividend investors, a lot of your consumer goods companies like Colgate-Palmolive, Clorox company. It's kind of good to diversify into different sectors. You don't want be really heavy just in like utilities and energy, for example. You want to kind of spread it out so you're not, there's Granger at 1.8%. I tend to go towards high 2% for me personally. I like to get high 2%, 3% dividend. I did good on Leggett Platt years ago. McDonald's Corporation is a good one. I know that they've had a much higher yield than this before. They've been into threes. And you kind of know this after People United Financial. They pay a good dividend. I personally wouldn't pay attention to these, but that's just me personally. Some people like to buy based off how fast they raise their dividend. The challenge with that is that stuff, it takes a little bit more legwork to figure this out. AT&T, 5%. Wonder what AT&T is right now. It was 5% back then. Where's it at now? 5.3%. It's even a better buy now. And see how solid the stock price is? Oh, sorry, let's see if I can find a 5-year. The stock price doesn't move a whole lot. I mean, for the most part, it's been in the $30 range for the most part. It was a better buyback here in April and May. If you could have picked this up in December 1st of 2019, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but you kind of know based off the chart, it revisits these levels, and you can kind of calculate, where the price might be when you pick it up. But dividend investing is phenomenal. And here's another great thing about dividend investing. I should have mentioned this. When you're in the stock market, you're in the big money market. The power players in the world, the largest hedge funds, the largest retirement funds, the largest, biggest corporate companies in the world, who oftentimes affect government policies through millions of dollars of lobbying, you're kind of on their side a little bit. And some people don't like that. But I mean, blue chip dividend stocks, that's the bread and butter for most of your pension plans, etc. So when you have some money in dividend stocks, you're in the most resilient sector of the stock market probably. Now, I will tell you, if you want to make some capital gains, when the stock market pulls back strong, look at the dividend aristocrats, because they're typically the first stocks to rebound when the stock market goes back up. That's how I've done really well with them. Pick them up when the economy slows down. So dividend aristocrats, dividend investing, specifically dividend aristocrats, anytime that you notice that someone comes off the dividend aristocrats list, they cut their dividend or whatever, that's a good time to consider selling out of that particular position, at least for me personally. Again, that's not financial advice for you. This is just how I've done it and how I like to look at it. All right, so the first one's dividend aristocrats. Second up, real estate. Real estate is enormous. I'll be very honest with you. It is the one thing that does not get enough attention. If people understood how powerful real estate investing was, oh my goodness. So the problem with the stock market is you actually cannot control the underlying asset at all. You can affect the price of the stock at all. But you can buy a house, and this is about multifamily. I tried to look for a chart, and I'll talk about that chart in a minute. I couldn't find it, but this kind of discussed it a little bit. And weak economies is one of the times that rental property specifically shines. We're not talking about buying and flipping. We're talking about buying and renting. Owning rental property is so much easier than people realize. I hear people complain all the time about being a landlord. And I think, dear God in heaven, learn how to hire a good property management company for dear God's sakes. And by the way, that's actually not even a lot of your real estate investors, a lot of the hardcore guys that old white hair guys been managing a little bit of real estate their whole life. They kind of do everything. They might have a handyman that does a lot for them, but they don't like to manage it themselves. They don't ever like to talk about property management companies. But you can hire a property management company for 15% or less, and when you don't have to manage most of it, it just frees up so much of your time. Now, I could give you a mini course on real estate investing, and I'm not going to do that, but just know this. It's worth taking some time to learn to buy a rental property. Now, this is not for everyone. I am not talking about go out there and get, an enormous mortgage. An enormous mortgage or borrow a lot of money for real estate. The downside to real estate is this is not for everyone. If you believe, like I do, that it's possible that we're headed towards weak economic times, then you do not want to have large mortgages owed to the bank. It is possible for banks to recall loans, and people are unaware of that. But the first loans they recall tend to be lines of credit for businesses, and they will recall commercial and large real estate portfolio lines of credit as well. So you just got to be mindful of that. They're not typically going to recall the mortgage on, John Smith's house down the road. And, he's lived in it for 20 years and he owes another 15 years on it. They're usually not going to recall that mortgage. But they can recall mortgages. So I don't think it's worth being on the hook. The rental property is best when you can buy it with 50% down or more. Most of your books talk about no money real estate, blah, blah, blah. It's the riskiest way to buy real estate. Would never recommend it. It's hard to get really good deals. But you can find good deals in real estate quite easily in most any market. But if you're going to rent it out, here's the key. I want you to look at this. The chart I was trying to show you, I was trying to find, I can't find it, but there's a chart that shows the real estate prices in California, which has been historically a very volatile real estate market. And it shows you that in 2006, 2007, 2008, across the board, real estate prices dropped a lot. I forget, it's like 35, 45%, a lot. However, rental prices went down on average like 6% or something. It's really low, like really, really low. And it just shows you how resilient the real estate sector is, specifically the rental sector. But why? Because if you have the right types of properties, like your bread and butter, middle class America, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family home. If people can't afford their house, if they've got to move, they're going to move into that house. And it's probably true for apartments here. This chart was talking about apartment rentals. But look what it says right here. During the 2008-2009 recession, multifamily rents were more resilient than those of office, industrial, and retail. Obviously, right? Because these are all businesses. Multifamily rents have outperformed those of other major property sectors during and after 2008-2009 in 3 ways. The sector experienced the lowest level of rent decline, the fastest recovery to pre-recession peaks, and the longest post-recession period of rent growth. I would say this is probably true for single family as well. They don't talk about single family here, but the chart I was trying to look for was talking about single family. I probably spent 15 minutes trying to find that chart and I could not find it. It was actually done by the state of California though as well. So it just tends to be very resilient. Rents tend to do well. As long as you don't get in too much debt buying the property, as long as you can buy, I mean, think about it. You know, you get $500 or $1,000 a month in cash flow. I mean, and you still have an underlying asset that you can sell if you want to, that still has value, that you can control. You can directly impact the value of that property by making subtle, small improvements in some cases. I've got a property that we, in about 2 years, we've earned about $50,000 on that property just in price appreciation alone, not even considering rent appreciation. Why do I know that? Because I'm selling that property and I'm blown away. I own the property, own it outright, and I'm selling it, and I just cannot get over how much it's went up in value in such a short amount of time, which tells me if I'm going to sell a property, now's the time to sell it. The market cannot continue to go up that high, that much, that long, which makes me think with everything going on government-wise, economically, at some point we're headed towards a slowdown. And rental properties are great to own in a slowdown. So, dividend aristocrats is number 1. Number 2 is rental properties. All right, number three, gold and silver. Gold and silver. There's a lot of people out there that tell you that, you know, gold's amazing and blah, 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 but just, you know, and there's people who believe that, where's it at? Right here. When people are uncertain, during uncertain economic times, the value of gold normally goes up. There's an 87% correlation, 87% monthly correlation. So I'm not one of these people that believe you should own a ton of gold and silver. I own gold and silver. I think everybody should own a little bit. And you know, buy it somewhere reputable, somewhere like, you know, what is it? Ampex is one. Kitco's another one. Just large companies, and you just want to buy either bullion or maybe like silver and gold eagles. You can also buy these American eagles. You know, typically what I would do is I personally don't like to buy raw bullion. I like to look at either American silver eagles or Canadian maple leafs, whatever is cheaper at that point. You know, as long as it's 1 ounce of silver, I'd normally look for what's cheaper personally. The best way to buy, by the way, precious metals is particularly silver and gold. You can buy a 10th ounce of gold. You know, it's about, what is it, $150, $160. What is it? So an ounce of gold is $1,500. You know, 10th ounce gold coin is going to be $150. Locally is the best way. Small coin dealers, some of your pawn shops, know what the prices are on big websites like this before you go to somewhere local, because sometimes they'll gouge you. But not typically in my experience. I mean, typically those people are used to selling gold and silver. They have people who come in and buy regularly. They know that they can't just outright gouge you. So just an FYI, gold and silver is a beautiful thing to own a little bit periodically. And you don't have to own, like, you don't have to go, this isn't like buying a house, right? You can get started with, you know, about 20 ounces, about $20 for American Silver Eagle. And some people buy bullion or whatnot. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I think it's smart for everybody to own a little bit of gold, a little bit of silver, particularly if we're going to have weak economic times. Now, those are my 3 best investments for 2020. I'm going to tell you number 4 right now. But before I get to number 4, I want to say this. If you've gotten some value out of this channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss my next upcoming video. And if this has been helpful, do me a favor, or if you even agree with this content, hit that thumbs up icon if you don't mind. And let me know, what's your favorite investment so far out of these 3 or out of number 4? Let's talk about number 4. Number 4 is a bit more risky, but I think it has the biggest potential for capital gains, or maybe that's the wrong term, capital growth. I'll put it that way, value growth. What am I talking about? Cryptocurrency. You do not hear about this. People don't talk about this a whole lot. You hear all this stuff about how great the stock market's been doing, but no one talks about how great Bitcoin's done. And maybe it's because it's been so volatile. But look, this chart on CoinMarketCap goes all the way back to 2013. So we're not even looking at 10 years. In 2013, it was $143 per Bitcoin. At this very moment, it's like $71, $73, $72, $7,200 per Bitcoin. In 10 years, I don't know of any asset that's went up that much, that high of a percentage. And if you understand the purpose in Bitcoin, the whole purpose in Bitcoin is to combat these issues here. It's to combat the government debt ceiling. A lot of people are worried about inflation. A lot of people are worried about losing the value of their dollar. You know, that they got a retirement account and they're worried about, you know, is the price of my retirement account going to go down? You know, is the value of my retirement going to go down? I was speaking to someone a few years ago. She told me in the early 2000s, she went to retire. And when she went to retire, she was well into her 60s. And in 2 years, her retirement portfolio, like her 401k or whatever, had went down 45%. That's crazy. You think about the fact that somebody has worked for 30, 40 years of their life to lose 40% of that value in 2 short years. I want to show you something just so you can understand this, because I haven't showed you this yet. Listen to this carefully.
Conspiracies going on all over the place, and as we pointed out, the conspiracies to rig precious metals markets, we presented it here on Kai's Report back in 2011. People said it was a conspiracy theory, and indeed it was a theory of ours that it was being rigged and there was racketeering going on. It is now a conspiracy, indeed, in fact, as the Department of Justice is charging them. There is a conspiracy going on in the...
By the way, she was talking about, I think it was Jamie Dimon, who was manipulating the gold market. And he's, I think it was Jamie Dimon she's referring to. Basically, they're investigating him for basically manipulating the gold market, precious metals market.
Repo markets. We know for a fact that central banks, well, the New York Fed in particular, is conspiring to rig something. We don't know what is going on because it is a black hole. We don't, and a black box. We don't know which bank or which shadow banking member, like who is in trouble. And we have this headline tweet here, in fact, from Fred Hickey, and he says, this massive daily Fed intervention business appears to be getting worse and worse. What is the Fed hiding? The longer this goes on and the bigger the interventions get, the more my confidence is shaken. I expect that's true for other investors too. And he was responding to a tweet from Brad Houston about the Fed temporary repos. On September 17th, they said, we're doing repos today and tomorrow. On September 19th, they said, we're extending repos.
Bear with it. They're going to explain what repos are in a minute. It's important that you understand this stuff, particularly if you're looking at investing in the current climate, because all of this is like just happened the end of the year.
Until October 10th, 75 billion overnight, 30 billion term, and then on October 4th, we're extending repos until 11/14, 10/11, we're extending repos until January 2020, 10/23, we're expanding overnight repo offering to 120 billion and 45 billion term.
There's a run on the bank for the highest liquid, shortest term base money paper. And there is not sufficient quantities to keep the system afloat. And some major bank, could be JP Morgan, that's my guess, is soon to announce bankruptcy or insolvency, or Deutsche Bank. And this is, of course, I've looked at the numbers. Not since 1920-21 have we seen such a collapse in base money.
In fact, we're going to go to a headline here, and it talks exactly about that, and that shows the data that the base money supply is declining at the same rate of 1920-21. Gold, credit, and the coming financial collapse. Since 2016, the U.S. monetary base has declined by about 23.68%. This is the deepest and longest decline since the Federal Reserve was formed on December 23rd, 1913. This should not be ignored. The last time there was a decline close to this magnitude, there was a sharp deflationary recession. That was the one that occurred from 1920 to 21. Here's today. You can see the decline in the monetary base, and back there in 1920-21. And just for definition purposes, that we're all on the same page, he defines the monetary base as the foundation part of the money supply and represents the most liquid part of it. It basically acts like gold in a 100% funded gold standard. It represents the final settlement of a transaction.
Right, that's the key, the settlement layer, as it's called, with the most liquid, highest grade paper, government paper. If these banks, like a JP Morgan or a Deutsche Bank, are unable to settle trades because they don't have the cash to settle the trade, then when the end of the quarter comes, they're going to have to, by law, if there is the rule of law anymore, and that's an open question, announce that they are insolvent, and therefore they're going to set off a cascade.
So now he's explaining what the repo market is.
In a contagion. That will be a continuation of the 2008 crisis, but much, much worse, because in the 2008 crisis, the response by central banks was to inject 16 or 17 trillion of money into the system. And the hope was that this would create growth, GDP growth, and taxable revenue to pay down some debt. But instead, the banks simply took that money and hoarded it on their own balance sheets. And they, in turn, did not lend it out into the economy. They did not create any meaningful GDP growth, and in fact, over-leveraged the economy 10 times greater than it had been in 2008. So now this debt bomb is exploding, and the Fed is desperately trying to cover it in the repo market, which is like trying to put out that fire in California with a squirt gun.
So the final settlement of a transaction, that's cash, that's gold, that's Bitcoin. There's no counterparty risk. These people in the financial markets do not want to swap that for any instrument with a counterparty. We're seeing a huge run on the counterparty market. Nobody wants any sort of instrument with a counterparty, it would seem. During the 1920 to 21 recession, the decline in the monetary base eventually made it into the broader money supply, and this caused a significant drop in price levels between 13 and 18% during the recession, with wholesale prices dropping as much as 36%. This is not yet filtered into the market. Perhaps it might not, but at the moment, even though it's down more than it was in 1920, 21, if the monetary base is declining, then less means to service debt is available and could trigger mass defaults. Cash becomes scarce, and suddenly you have a situation where the Fed has to intervene in the repo market like it has been over the last couple of weeks just to keep the system going.
So what I want you to understand is, for the Fed to be doing what they're doing in the repo market is a sign that nobody's talking about, that there is something very, very wrong in the economy. And at some point, this becomes unraveled. And it could become unraveled this year. So everything that I'm referring to are investments that should at least not hurt as bad as traditional investments, or B, they should potentially go up. Gold, Bitcoin may potentially go up in value during a strong economic downturn, when people lose faith in their governments, lose faith in the cash. I think this is where it goes into the repo market. Listen to this.
Right, so going back to 2008 when this all started, this is why pundits like Peter Schiff got it wrong, because he was calling for inflation.
Yes.
And people like Rick Ackerman, who are on our show, were saying, no, this is deflation. And now we see that it is a massive deflation, a deflationary depression, where prices collapse. And this is what we're facing now.
That's what they're suggesting. Of course, this is the jump up. You see a massive, probably the highest percentage increase in monetary base in the entire chart since the beginning of the Fed. That did happen in 2008 and 2009. Perhaps they saw a different outcome that didn't.
Well, that was a bailout, and it wasn't put into the economy. They bailed out the creditors, thanks to Barack Obama, who made the 180-degree wrong strategic choice and set the country in a course of epic failure. Thanks, Obama.
Did you see, by the way, that I got rid of that spider that was climbing down?
Okay. So I thought he was going to cover the repo market. He didn't. So just to cover what happens in the repo market. Basically, a bank is looking, at the end of the day, they have to settle up. One bank will not lend to another bank because they're worried. They literally are worried about their ability to repay within the next 24 hours, which is what he was talking about. He thinks it might be JP Morgan is having trouble possibly being solvent. So therefore, at some point, they have to take a walk of shame and they have to go to the federal government and ask for help. The government is not saying who's having trouble or who's asking for help, but what they're doing is they're basically injecting capital on a nightly basis every night right now just to help those banks cover their short-term financial requirements. So sooner or later, something may come to light of this. Either way, it's not good. If you go back and look at that tweet, I mean, it's really kind of scary. I'm going to see if I can pull it back up. This tweet on the 17th, what's that? Is that October? Is that November? On the 17th, September. On the 17th of September, we're doing repos today and tomorrow. Only 2 days they announced it. Then on the 19th, okay, we're going to extend. So they went from saying we're going to do it 2 days here. Here's the thing. Look how clueless everybody is. The Fed says on the 17th, we're going to buy it for 2 days. Then on the 19th, they say, no, we're going to buy it for the rest of the month, another 10 days. So we're going to go from 2 days to 20 days. And then we're going to do up to 75 billion overnight. Then before we even get to the 10th, on the 4th, we're going to extend till November 4th. And then before we get to November 4th, they say on the 11th, October, we're extending until January 2020. And now all of a sudden, 12 more days after that, they say we're expanding overnight. So instead of 75, we're going to double it to 120 billion. So it's not getting better. Again, we're headed towards financial concerns. And so that's why I'm a fan of having some gold or silver at least, because you never know what's going to happen. Gold and silver is like the old crap policy. Bitcoin, same thing. It's worth. You can get Bitcoin on Coinbase. That's what I'm pointing out to you. But Bitcoin it's worth having some Bitcoin just in case. And I encourage you to go to YouTube, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to other cryptocurrency channels. Start doing research. Go to Google, search cryptocurrency, search Bitcoin. On my channel, I've got 3 videos. If you go to my channel homepage, three best Bitcoin tutorials. They really explain exactly what is Bitcoin. In fact, I'll see if I can find that playlist and put it in the top right-hand corner. But if not, you can just go to my channel homepage. I've got that video up there, exactly what is Bitcoin. That's a great tutorial series that starts out very simple. There's 3 videos. The first one is very simple. The second one is a little more complex. And the third one is a lot more complex. But the whole idea is understanding exactly what is Bitcoin, why does it work as a currency, and why are people using it. And once you go down that rabbit hole, the whole cryptocurrency is fascinating. What if I told you there was a move to create like a Web 3.0 where the internet doesn't exist on any one server and it exists on a blockchain, totally decentralized, where there's no entity or no government that can single-handedly shut it down or close it or restrict it. You're talking about ultimate information freedom. Well, there are cryptocurrency projects, not Bitcoin. There's other cryptocurrency projects that are working on something such as that. You start looking at the cryptocurrency space, you start doing research in this whole space, and it is absolutely, absolutely fascinating. It looks like right now it's at 69.83. The price has been coming down, so it's probably a good time to pick it up. and I would recommend dollar cost averaging in. Each week, each month, buy a little bit, throughout 2020. And let it be a part of your portfolio, not a major part. Not a major part at all. Let it be a part of your portfolio. Your most speculative part. It may go up. We may see 20,000 before the end of 2020. We may see new highs. We may see 50,000. If there's a financial collapse, who knows? It's unpredictable. Bitcoin may go down with the rest of the market, or it may skyrocket right now. I mean, it may absolutely skyrocket. Another very interesting, let's see. Listen to this. We were talking about China earlier.
Well, Obama should have bailed out the debtors, not the creditors, right? I mean, okay, so anyway, so Alistair McLeod of goldmoney.com recently suggested that China could soon announce it has 10,000, perhaps 20,000 tons of gold. Is this crazy? Is it possible? What are your thoughts?
Well, he and I are not super close, but we have our private talks down there, and I don't think he's crazy. I wouldn't go with 20, but 10 I don't think is out of the question. But the answer is no one really knows.
Okay, but the premise here is that they've been secretly accumulating a huge stockpile of gold as kind of the nuclear option against the dollar in the U.S. If this trade talks with China go badly, China can whip out this nuclear option and say, you know what, we actually got 10, 15,000 tons of gold, and dollar's now finished, and we're going, us, Russia, and somebody else maybe are going to go to a gold-backed currency. Forget it. You're toast.
Right. One fine point that very few people know about the amount of gold that China has is asking the wrong question. When they report the amount of gold, what has happened is it's asked specifically how much gold is held in that bank in China, and they give you the answer instead of asking the correct question, which is how much gold everywhere in China is held under the national name. They don't ask that question. So the Chinese are actually answering a very explicit question in a very explicit way. So no one really knows the amount because they don't actually report everything. They're reporting what's asked for.
So who's the biggest gold miner in the world?
Probably the Chinese.
And do we ever see a gold ingot with a Chinese stamp on it?
Never. Well, I mean, you see them, but they stay in China. They're
Right.
not allowed to export.
They don't leave.
Yeah. See pictures of them.
Right?
Yeah.
Plus, they're buying everywhere.
Exactly.
And they by official reserve number, they're number 2 or 3, I think. And so they could easily be number 1 on a stealth, the stealth basis.
Agreed.
So here's just to recap this. So if China comes back at some point, Donald Trump and President Xi, whatever, having these trade talks, think about that. China has the largest mining operation in the world, but they don't sell their gold outside of their country. So they keep largest mining operation in the world, but they keep all their gold. Every other country in the world that mines gold sells their gold on an open market, but not China. Yet China is the largest mining operation in the world, or has the largest mining operation in the world. Now, combine that with the fact that China is also one of the largest gold buyers in the world. China has encouraged their citizens to buy and hold and own gold. I mean, clearly, at the very least, China's preparing for the day that they may decide to dump U.S. debt. When they stop buying U.S. debt, that's economically problems for America. By the way, not to mention the fact that when China buys debt, they're buying it with U.S. dollars. The only reason I can't even go down this path. The dollar is a U.S. world reserve currency. But if China and Russia and several other countries ever create a gold-backed currency, a sizable percentage of the world will use that currency, a sizable percentage, enough that it could cause tremendously difficult economic times for America and all Americans. So my advice for 2020, this is bonus advice. I didn't actually mention this. My advice for 2020, get out of debt. Start paying off your debt aggressively. You don't want to be beholden to the banks if you can help it at all. If you're going to invest in the traditional financial system, invest in dividend aristocrats. Outside of that, if you have the wherewithal, the financial means, look at paying off your mortgage, look at picking up some real estate, rental property, cheap rental property if you can. Heck, buy a mobile home if you can pay it off. The cash flow of mobile homes is insane. I'm not telling you that's the best investment. I'm just telling you it's a great way to start. Outside of that, gold and silver. Pick up some gold and silver. Let it be at least 5-10% of your portfolio, maybe 15%. Cryptocurrency. Pick up Bitcoin. How do you buy Bitcoin? Easiest way for most people to buy Bitcoin is just go to Coinbase. Coinbase.com. Open an account. Look, they'll give you $126 of free cryptocurrency that you can sell into Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin, it's other cryptocurrencies, but you can sell it into Bitcoin. You can send that Bitcoin to your bank account in US dollars if you want. Or what I recommend is you just hold it. Just hold on to it. That's what I recommend that you do. Because the price may go way, way up in 2020. Way up. By the way, something else you can do, I'll put a link in the description. I've been this entire time, I've been using the Cryptotab web browser on every single, this is my favorite web browser. I use it all the time, all the time, all the time. But what it uses your computer resources to mine Bitcoin behind the scenes. You're not gonna make a lot, maybe a couple dollars, few dollars a month in Bitcoin, but it's totally free. You don't earn anything using Chrome, but this browser, by the way, is built off of Chrome, so it works just like Chrome. But using Chrome, using Firefox, using Internet Explorer, whatever other web browser you use, none of those web browsers, none of them allow you to earn cryptocurrency. None of them. But the Cryptotab browser does as well. It's simple to purchase Bitcoin. You can go get $126 worth of cryptocurrency for free, sell it into Bitcoin on Coinbase. You can set up a weekly or monthly $10 purchase, $50 purchase, $500 purchase on Coinbase if you want. Now, just get started. Ideally, you want to learn how to set up a wallet. It's not hard. And send your Bitcoin to your own wallet. That way you have access to it. Having your cryptocurrency, it's fine to start with Coinbase, but leaving it sitting on Coinbase is like leaving your money in a bank account versus having your money at home. It's like having your gold and silver stored with a third party, and you have to trust that third party is going to hold and store and insure your gold and silver versus having it delivered to your house and holding it. The problem is it's not easy to have enormous quantities of gold and silver delivered to your home. That's kind of a challenge. But you can put enormous quantities of cryptocurrency on what's known as a paper wallet or something like a Nano or Ledger. But don't worry about that right now. Just get started. Just go buy your first Bitcoin. When you start researching, you'll learn how to set up a wallet. You want to set up a cold storage wallet. It's super easy. It's not as hard as you would think. And you're going to own an asset that nobody can literally take from you. As long as you don't lose your private keys, nobody can ever take it away from you. It's super easy to get started. If nothing else, heck, just get your Cryptotab browser downloaded and start earning a couple dollars a month, maybe more, in free cryptocurrency, just using your web browser on your computer. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Together, we're going to protect and grow our financial futures specifically in 2020. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.